Hi everyone, I wanted to do a couple additional slides just to clarify and talk a little bit more about getting your committee together, and then also just the general big picture of how this class and the proposal fits into the big picture of your larger MPH program. So hopefully this kind of helps um, ease your mind in some ways as far as what steps you need to take, but then also gives you a good idea of what to expect. All right, so how do you even start putting together your committee for your thesis or your capstone? Well, the first thing is to meet with me, for the purposes of this class, but in general, to talk about whether you want to do a thesis or capstone, what your topic is, and then we'll also talk about, based on that, who might be a good chair for your committee, and we'll also talk about who might be a good second person or a second member on your committee. Um, Once we kind of talk this through, you should have a better idea of, who might have an expertise and be kind of a good fit. Um, on the side note, I'll be opening up spots each week so that we can continue our conversations about your thesis and capstone. I recommend meeting with me at least every other week. But depending on your needs or if you have questions, I'll be opening up spots each week for this class and, helping you get to the proposal presentation. I really want to make sure everyone's on track and that you can, best utilize this course to meet that milestone. So after we talk and you have a better idea of who you think you want to have as your chair, I would put together an email, include your proposed topic, and if you can, even articulate, better yet, a research question or a project goal, ideas on how you're going to get the data or where you're going to get it, and then ask if they are willing to serve as the chair of your committee. And hopefully, we've been able to identify someone who matches in some way your topic, with your topic. And if not, then we can think about a second option. But hopefully you get your first approval with the person that you ask. From there, I would speak with your chair about one, who they suggest for a second member, or second, even share with them your suggestion and what they think about that. So you might say, I'm thinking about, I think, Dr. Santos or Morton would be a great second. What do you think about that? Or if there's someone from an organization that you're working with or another university, someone that has something to do with your project and they have a PhD, they could also potentially be a second committee person. So that's something I would talk with your chair about, and of course we can talk about that as well. And then similar, once you have an agreement on who the potential second member is, I would email them, again, similarly with your research question and project goal, and then ask them if they will sit on your committee as the second member. As the second member, a lot of times you're using that person, as I mentioned in my other presentation, whether for their methods expertise or subject matter, and they're there to help you guide in a very specific way and look at later drafts, eventually, of your whole entire thesis or proposal. But really at this stage, you're primarily working with your chair. And that kind of leads to number 4. So that once you have your chair on board, continue to work with them on refining your research question or your capstone project goal, and then also working out the methods. Are you collecting data and then building a database with all the information? Is it quantitative or qualitative? Is it going to be something that's already publicly available, so you're doing secondary data analysis? Really utilize your chair. In this class, PH 507, I'm going to help you with that process, since it's also a research methods class. But ultimately, your chair is the leader of your committee, and they might have suggestions for how they want you to analyze something, or suggestions for the types of methods or the things that you do, particular for your project. So again, just to kind of reiterate, ultimately your chair is the leader of your committee, but I will be helping you through the process and perhaps maybe understanding different options or suggesting, certain things for you. My suggestion, aside from meeting with me every other week for the purposes of this course and getting your proposal together, I would meet with your chair as well, potentially every other week, or for the most part, at least two times. So let's say you met with them week 3 and week 5 or 6. Hopefully by then you'll have a good idea on how prepared you are to give your presentation week 7 or 8. Or I think it's week 7, sorry. So again, those are kind of the steps. 1, meet with me so we can talk about your topic and committee setup. Once you have the chair in mind, send them an email and invite them. 3rd, work with your chair to figure out who the second person is, and then invite the second person. And then pretty much moving forward, keep in contact with your chair, refining your research questions, thinking about your methods, how are you going to complete the work, and make sure you really have that solid and that you're working side by side with your chair on that. And again, I'll help with the process, but ultimately your chair leads your committee. And again, try to set up some meetings with your chair as well. So the next slide is kind of a little bit more on the big picture. How does this all fit into your MPH program? Okay, the big picture. So I will say the little caveat here is that it applies to most that are taking 507 right now as the spring incoming cohort. There might be some exceptions or some different scheduling, but for the most part, this is kind of what most everyone is going through. So right now you're taking 507 and 505, and in this fall 1 term, what we're really utilizing 507 for is all that is in this next box, which is your thesis capstone timeline. And again, this is very broad, but I'm hoping this gives you a better kind of big picture up until graduation. So right now, what we really need to get done in fall 1 is put together your committee, which should happen by next week. I'm going to push you all. We're going to develop your thesis or capstone proposal. And then by the end of this class, you're actually going to present your proposal for the purposes of the class. However, if it's possible to have your committee members present, meaning, and in this case, it'll probably be through Zoom, if you can schedule it in week 7 at a time where all 3 of us are available, or 3 of us if I'm on your committee, so the student and the 2 committee members, you could use the class presentation essentially as your proposal presentation, kind of double dipping. One of the milestones for the MPH program and to advance to candidacy is to get approval for your proposed thesis or capstone. And so I always try to think of ways to, have the course work for you in other ways, kind of like double dipping. And in this way, you don't have to do another presentation. There are some students who are not ready yet. So by week 7, they will use the class presentation as practice for their proposal. And then you have to make another meeting and set it up with your committee members to give your official proposal. So that's how I'm trying to combine it and make sure that by week 7, everybody is as ready as possible so that you can invite your committee members and potentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You did the assignment for class, but you also got your official thesis and capstone approved. So that is the goal for fall 1. Now for fall 2, the courses you're taking are 531 and 532. 531, mostly talks about developing an intervention, and 532 is a little bit more skills-based and based on feedback. This used to be more towards the end of your program, still towards the end, but not the very end. We want to pair it as close to 507 as possible because in this class, we do work on writing up a mini grant, but we also do kind of pretend or example data collection where you do actually collect data. I show you how to input it into a database and how to do some basic statistics. So this class is kind of neat because it gives you some practical skills that you can use. So in fall 2, After you've got your thesis or capstone approved, now you need to get IRB approval if applicable, and everybody should submit IRB even if you just need a letter to say that you are exempt. So if you're doing secondary data analysis and you don't have any identifying information, I would put in an IRB sort of letter. You'll see the process on if you just Google CSUSM IRB, and you should get a letter saying the proposed work that you submitted is exempt from IRB. Now, if you are going to have contact with people or human subjects, then you might have to do an expedited review where IRB folks look to make sure everything's ethical, that you have protocols and you have a survey in place, you have your analysis plan, and then you get your IRB approval for that type of work. So first, after you get your proposal approved, immediately get IRB approval from the university. Then in this time, which is pretty much October to December, you're going to want to start collecting or working with data as much as possible. So I kind of call this phase a little bit more heavy on the methods. This is your time to really get as much work done as you can for your thesis. One huge tip that I always say is while you're working on getting data or cleaning data or collecting data, basically kind of the work for your thesis, you can get ahead and essentially start drafts of your background and of your methods because you already know those things, or at least are able to do it, even if you don't have all of your data collected or analyzed yet. You basically want to get as much writing done as you can. So again, while you're kind of working a little bit more heavy in the methods, trying to get a lot of the actual work done, do as much writing as possible. Because what you don't want to do is do the study, collect the data, and then once everything's analyzed, start writing the whole thesis and capstone. That will have you rushing for sure and a little bit of a panic. So as much as you can get done writing the background and methods, that's the best advice I can give you. And luckily, as you write your proposal, because remember in PH 507, it's a 6 to 8 page proposal, you'll have done a lot of that preliminary work. So for a thesis and capstone, obviously you just want to expand on that, add more references, give more details on the methods, but you'll have done the proposal, which includes that information as well. So now we have holiday break, and then we come back in January for spring 1. This is where you should really be wrapping up your analyses, and I kind of call this period the heavy writing, wrapping up drafts. You should be have already had maybe a first draft of background and methods, so hopefully at this time you're starting to see some results that you can start writing up your results, creating table shells. Even if you're still kind of wrapping up, you could write your results section with leaving things blank because you know what you're going to be analyzing. And again, January through March, you should really be wrapping up, starting to get into the later drafts of your thesis or capstone. So all this kind of happens really fast, right? So January through March. Now I'm working backwards. So you should be graduating May 15 or 16. I don't know when our department is going to have the commencement, but it's one of those days. Your actual thesis or capstone is due to the library May 7th. That's the absolute deadline so that you could graduate. My suggestion is always to try and submit it at least 1 week before so that you can catch anything that might hold up the submission of your thesis or capstone. So let's say you submit May 1st and that's your goal. Well, you want to defend about 2 weeks before that, because after you defend your thesis or capstone, you're going to have edits that your committee will say, okay, before you submit, you need to fix, XYZ, and you need to add XYZ or edit XYZ. So that gives you 2 weeks to finish whatever edits that you need so that you could submit your final draft by May 1st. If you are defending in mid-April, that means 2 weeks before that, you should have your basically what you think is your final draft, your penultimate draft, to all your committee members. That's your chair and your second. The reason I kind of differentiate and say all committee members is because before that, you might be working with your chair with multiple drafts. You might even include your second committee member in certain parts of it if they have an expertise or they want to be involved as a second member a little bit more. But definitely by March 30th, or at least 2 weeks before your defense, you want your whole committee to have practically your thesis or capstone completed. That way they have 2 weeks to review before you defend, and then after that you have 2 weeks to fix anything that you do that you need to. And everybody has something to fix. So you can expect some edits or additions after you do your defense. And then again, you submit and then you graduate. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a bigger picture of one, the courses that you're taking, and then also more or less, what is the thesis capstone timeline? And I hope that for the assignment that we have that's due Sunday, it'll give you a better picture and you can put more specific dates as far as getting approvals, when you think you'll have draft 1, 2, 3. It's still going to be kind of general until you work with your chair, but again, it helps give you a really good picture of what this timeline looks like. So hopefully this was a good kind of review of the bigger picture, not just your classes, but also your timeline within the whole entire NPH program. And as always, feel free to let me know if you have any other questions. Thanks.